It's Friday night! It's the preview show! It's the No Nay Never podcast!
Hello and welcome to the preview show brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Bromley, but you're not here to see me. You are here, of course, to see the main man himself, the headliner of the preview show. It is Dave Statman Roberts. Dave, hello, how are you?
Hello, Natalie. I'm much better for us having won a league game last week.
Definitely. It was very, very nice doing the analysis show at the weekend, on the Tuesday when we actually talked about a win. It was, it was really good. And not just a win, Dave, a very comprehensive win at that. Did you enjoy that game?
Very much so, yeah. Very emphatic, very impressive first half performance. And it could have been more than three, couldn't it, that first half with disallowed goal and other chances. I thought we played really well. And then we did what we needed to do in the second half and saw it out and got a well-deserved win.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we talk a lot as well about the importance of beating some of the teams around you. And I think it was quite important to the context of the season as a whole to perhaps take a little bit of the wind out of Brentford's sails. Would you agree?
Yeah, they'd had a reasonable start to the season. I mean, you do sometimes get that bounce when you get promoted. Some teams do that. I know, certainly when first time we got promoted, we had 4 consecutive home wins, didn't we? We had a really good start, and it does get a little bit more difficult after that. Teams do start to figure you out a little bit, and it'll get tougher for them as the season goes on, I suspect.
Yeah, it definitely will. So obviously we've got a previous show that we need to do this week, Dave, so let's get cracking with that. We can you guys tune into the analysis show if you want to have a bit of a greater in-depth look at what happened against Brentford at the weekend. But we've got another game to look at because Dave and I in the previous show, we are always looking forward, never back, apart from when we get to the history section, but that's another matter. Semantics. Quiz question, Dave. Now, before we were looking ahead to that Brentford game, you set our listeners a question. And that question was, how many current Burnley players were in the Clarets match day squad, which is the starting 11 plus 7 subs, when Brentford last played at Turf Moor in a league match in the 15-16 season? This was a particularly tricky question. And it stumped us and a few of the non listeners, and a few people have fallen into a particular trap. So, Dave, why don't you tell us, well, number one, the answer, and see if anybody did actually get it right.
Well, we had lots of guesses, but several of the potential names can be eliminated once you realise that Ashley Barnes wasn't in the squad that day. He was injured. And Kevin Long, he was still recovering from the cruciate knee injury he suffered at Newcastle on New Year's Day earlier that year. We just signed Andre Gray from Brentford, but he wasn't included against his former club. And despite Matt Lowton also being a Burnley player by then, he wasn't yet Dyche fit, which means that the answer was just one. Ben Mee started the game. Ben Mee started the game, but he was the only player from the current squad to be included in Burnley's 18 that day. Of course, James Tarkowski was also in Brentford's starting 11 for that match, but we were only counting players from Burnley's squad.
Excellent. So who sent us some correct answers then, Dave?
Well, we didn't have any correct answers for our No Nay Never team. They were all guessing 2, 3 or 4, including yourself, Natalie. I think you were going in at 4, was your first guess?
I went in at 4, yeah, I did.
But one of our quiz regulars, Andrew Blythe, who was also one of the contestants in our summer Popemaster quiz, he travels down to matches all the way from Scotland. He did get it right, so well done to him. And also, I think John Robertson was the only other listener to get in touch with the correct answer.
Of course he was. Good old John. Always seems to get the right answer, doesn't he? We'll just leave it there. Well, we of course are going to have another quiz question for you. I should probably say, actually, we do always tease John Robertson on this show, but he is actually a VIP of the previous show. He's a very special friend of the show, so he knows that we love him really, and we aren't just taking a mickey. We're going to have another quiz question for you at the end of the episode, so please do stay tuned. Don't go away. But before we do that, we are going to start our Chelsea preview with a look back at this fixture, starting with a recap of our previous Premier League meetings. Dave, it's Saturday. It's Chelsea away. 6th of November 2021, 3 p.m, and once again, not televised, live in the UK. So what about the Premier League meetings, please?
Premier League head-to-head!
Right, well, after having no head-to-head Premier League games to discuss in last week's preview show, we're back on track this week as Burnley have faced Chelsea at Stamford Bridge in each of our previous 7 seasons as members of the exclusive Premier League club. Although it's prior to our time in the Premier League, we did also win a penalty shootout there in order to progress in the Carling Cup in November 2008. Undoubtedly the most memorable of our 7 Premier League visits to play Chelsea was an away win on the opening day of the 2017-18 season. Burnley took a 3-0 lead at half-time following Gary Cahill's early red card, and we clung on for a 3-2 win after Chelsea reduced to 9 men. We featured that match in the past, and so we'll be focusing on one of our 2 draws for our memory match in the next section. They were achieved in February 2015 and April 2019, and you have a matter of a minute, if that, to guess which of these 2 matches we're going to focus on after we come to the end of this section. Our remaining 4 visits to play at Stamford Bridge in the Premier League have ended in defeat. 3 of those were by a 3-0 scoreline, including in our first Premier League campaign of 2009-10, and there was also a 2-0 loss for the remaining game, which took place last season at the end of January. Burnley have yet to keep a clean sheet in the previous 7 Premier League visits to Stamford Bridge, so history suggests we may need to score at least twice if we're going to come away with a win on Saturday. Despite Chelsea's undoubted quality, we can have some solace in the fact that we've picked up some positive results at the Bridge. And on the back of our first Premier League home win of the season last weekend, we'll be going into this weekend's away game with renewed hope of another memorable match and hopefully a positive result.
Definitely.
Memory match!
What about the memory match then? Which particular game have you chosen to go with this week, Dave?
Right, well, as we've already mentioned, aside from that 3-2 win from August 2017, there have also been 2 draws in our recent top-flight visits to Stamford Bridge. The 2-2 draw in 2019 saw a flurry of goals in the first 25 minutes, as we took the lead through Jeff Hendrick before being pegged back by goals from N'Golo Kante and Gonzalo Higuain. But Ashley Barnes made it 2-2, and we eventually earned a draw and a valuable point. However, the game we're going to focus on is a rather eventful 1-1 draw from February 2015. There were 1,590 Burnley fans present to see this game, which included a red card for Nemanja Matic for retaliating with a push on Ashley Barnes after taking exception to his challenge. That was midway through the second half with the home side leading 1-0. That was due to Branislav Ivanovic scoring the opening goal after 14 minutes of the first half. For once, Burnley benefited from the numerical advantage and scored an equalising goal in the 81st minute after Kieran Trippier's corner found Ben Mee, who headed the ball in past Thibaut Courtois to make it 1-1. Chelsea manager Jose Mourinho had a mini meltdown in his post-match press conference, refusing to discuss any match incidents and merely referring.
An idiot that night. Sorry
He was.
to interrupt. He really was.
He was merely referring to the minutes where he felt his team had been wronged by decisions from the officials. But he didn't leave it at that. Oh no. He requisitioned Sky Sports' flagship Goals on Sunday programme and invited himself on as a guest to push his one-sided agenda further.
Indeed, what an absolute idiot.
On this day!
What about on this day then? I like this feature. What have you picked to highlight as to what happened on this day in a certain time?
Right, we're going all the way back through time for this. Burnley have won 10 of the previous 22 matches we've played on the 6th of November. Starting off in 1897, a Jimmy Ross goal in the 3rd minute earned an away win at Darwin in 1897. And after a 1-0 defeat at Leeds City in 1909, we won again in the 1920-21 Championship winning season with a 2-1 away win at Newcastle United. That was thanks to a Tommy Boyle penalty and another from Bob Kelly, both in the first half. Next up was a goalless draw against Bury at Turf Moor in 1926, followed by an emphatic 3-0 home win over Norwich City in 1937. Burnley lost the first 2 matches played on 6 November after the Second World War. They were a 3-1 away defeat at Aston Villa in 1948 and a heavy defeat at Wolves in 1954 by a 5-0 scoreline. However, we picked up our 4th win with a 3-1 victory over West Ham United in 1965, which took us above Liverpool and Leeds United to the top of the table. A 2-1 away defeat at Sheffield Wednesday in 1971 was followed by another couple of wins. Firstly, 5-0 at home to Hearts in the Texaco Cup in 1973, and then 1-0 at home to Oldham in 1976, thanks to a Peter Noble penalty. Both matches from the 1980s ended in defeat. Firstly, there was a 3-0 reverse at Newcastle in 1982, and then a 1-0 home defeat to Gillingham in 1984. The 1990s produced 2 home wins by a 2-1 scoreline, at home against Crewe in 1990 and York City in 1993. And then there was a 2-1 away defeat at Luton in 1999. There have been 6 matches on the 6th of November since 2000, and we've won 2, drawn 2, and lost 2. The 2 wins were a memorable 2-1 home win over Spurs in the Worthington Cup in 2002, with second-half goals from Robbie Blake and Steve Davis in reply to Gus Poyet's first-half opener, and then a 1-0 win over Leeds United in 2012, which was Sean Dyche's second game in charge. Charlie Austin, who else, was the goal scorer in that game. Our most recent match on the 6th of November was exactly 12 months ago when we drew 0-0 at Brighton in a largely forgettable game on a Friday night, and for some reason I seem to have little or no recollection of this game. So to summarise, our overall record on the 6th of November is played 22, won 10, drawn 3 and lost 9.
Wow, that is some impressive stats in there. I love that section. I find it really interesting.
Club Connection!
Club Connection then, which is another new feature we've got this season, where we bring you a player who spent time at both clubs and we focus on one player in particular. On this occasion, Dave did stick to the script as normal and did run a poll to let you decide who would be our player in focus for this week. Dave, who did our listeners pick?
Well, there weren't too many players who've worn the blue of Chelsea and the famous claret and blue Burnley shirt over the years. There's only 11, I think, by my reckoning, since the Second World War. But we did pick 4 of the most notable to see which one our listeners would vote for as their number 1. The 4 choices were Colin Waldron, Jim Thompson, Ian Britton and Frank Sinclair. And any one of those 4 players would have been a worthy subject to this section. But there could only be one winner, and that was the player who scored arguably Burnley's most important goal ever. And that is Ian Britton.
Of course, it had to be. It had to be that one, didn't it? Gosh, do you know, I used to work with Ian Britton. Only for a very brief amount of time. When he retired from football, he went into a civil servant role and worked for the Pendle Leisure, running a lot of the facilities for the council-run leisure facilities. And I was a lifeguard for a little while. And our paths used to cross, and I used to be like really starstruck. Really nice guy. Why don't you tell us all about his history then?
Yeah, well, he was born in Dundee in Scotland in 1954 and signed as an apprentice for Chelsea as a 17-year-old in 1971. He made his debut for their first team in December 1972, and despite suffering a couple of relegations with Chelsea in 1974-75 and also 1978-79, with a promotion in between in 1976-77, in all he made over 250 appearances for the London club over the course of a 10-year spell, scoring more than 30 goals from midfield. He joined his hometown club, Dundee United, in 1982, and following a short spell at Arbroath in 1983, he signed for 4th Division Blackpool, initially on loan, but this became a permanent deal, and he stayed there until 1986, forging a productive midfield partnership with future Claret Mike Conroy, earning a promotion to the 3rd Division in 1985. At the start of the 1986-87 season, Brian Miller brought him to Burnley, and although the Clarets struggled that season, it was Ian Britton who scored that all-important second goal with a header at the Beehole end in the vital Orient game in May 1987, after Neil Grucock had scored the opener. As we know, Burnley won 2-1 and results elsewhere went our way, and the rest is history. Ian Britton remained with Burnley until 1989, scoring 10 goals in 130 appearances. And like many other players, as you say, he remained in the local area after he'd hung up his boots. He even managed local side Nelson FC for a while during the 1990s. However, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2013 and died at the age of just 61 in March 2016. Although the team was in the doldrums for much of the 1980s, Burnley supporters still had their heroes from this era. and the name of Ian Britton will always have a special place in the history of Burnley Football Club.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, that's the end of the first half, where we look at some of the history surrounding this fixture. But it's time to return to the present for the second half of the show, starting with Dave, our scouting report.
Scouting report!
Yeah, 48-year-old German coach Thomas Tuchel has been in charge at Stamford Bridge since taking over from Frank Lampard in January. And he guided Chelsea to glory over Manchester City in the Champions League final in May, as well as being runners-up to Leicester City in the FA Cup and a fourth-place finish in the Premier League. Although they were relatively quiet in the summer transfer market, Chelsea brought in midfielder Saul Niguez on loan from Atletico Madrid, as well as signing goalkeeper Marcus Bettinelli on a free transfer from Fulham. However, they did eventually splash the cash, spending a reported £100 million on striker Romelu Lukaku from Inter Milan. A look at the tactics shows that Tuchel has tended to favour a 3-4-3 formation since taking over at Stamford Bridge. In their most recent Premier League game against Newcastle United, they had Edouard Mendy in goal, a back three of Christensen, Thiago Silva and Rudiger. Jorginho and Kante played the central midfield roles, with Reece James and Ben Chilwell on the flanks, and up front, Ziyech and Hudson-Odoi played just behind Kai Havertz. 3 Chelsea players have already passed the 50-point mark for FPL points for this season, with Reece James on 56 leading the way, ahead of Edouard Mendy and Antonio Rudiger, who are both on 51. Surprisingly, Reece James is also their top scorer with 4 Premier League goals to date. And we also have a new leader in terms of Burnley's highest scoring FPL player. Do you care to guess who that might be?
No. I would have thought it was Corny, surely.
Well, you may be surprised to discover it's actually Matt Lowton on 36 points. He leads the way ahead of Maxwell Cornet on 32 and Chris Wood on 30.
Wow. Well, you have heard what we've thought about our visitors, listeners, but for the balance, we always bring you the thought. Well, we say we always when they bother to get back to us. We tend to try and bring you the thoughts of our opposition fans, and this week is no exception. We managed to speak to Stamford Chidge, who we're presuming is not his real name, from the Chelsea FanCast, who gave us his thoughts ahead of the game.
Opposition view.
Stamford Chidge here from the Chelsea FanCast to have a quick look at the Chelsea-Burnley match on Saturday from the Chelsea perspective, obviously. I think we're all very, very happy with Chelsea's season so far. I mean, in a sense, how could you not be? I mean, we're top of the league, have been since the 2nd of October, which is arguably better than we expected, you could say. I know that a lot of people have us down as title favourites, but we still have a long way to claw back from last season. Man City, I think, was something like 15 points ahead of us when they won the title. So, it's no given, that's for sure. But, yeah, very happy with the fact that we're top. Very happy with some of the performances. We're really beginning to put some good performances together. Scoring goals from all over the pitch. And, I know people chuckle about the number of goals our defenders score. But, frankly, I don't care where they come from as long as they go in. And Reece James and Chilwell have been fantastic for us recently. I suppose if there's one slight disappointment, it is that the strikers just can't seem to find the back of the net. Werner's carried on the luckless form from last season. Lukaku's got injured, but, was struggling a little bit before he got injured. And Havertz is a different kind of striker, hasn't really set the world alight yet. But as I said, if we're scoring from all over the pitch, it doesn't really matter. So, I'm very happy with the start of the season, that's for sure. I suppose, the one worry on the horizon is the fact that there's a massive fixture backlog coming up in December. I think we've got something like 10 or 11 games in December, which will not be easy, as they never are. But actually, the funny thing is, well, not funny really, but in January, it arguably gets a bit worse because we've got Liverpool at home, we've got Man City away, we've got Spurs. No doubt that'll be an even bigger grudge match with Conte now in charge. We've got Arsenal. We've got Brighton, who, of course, have been very, very good this season. And we'll also maybe have a Carabao Cup semi-final. And, of course, we've got the World Club Cup, or the Club World Cup Championship, or whatever they call it, coming up sometime possibly in February. So there's a lot of fixtures, some tough ones in January. And I know we've got a very deep squad, but, we've already had quite a few injuries this season. So, I think even for us, that run of fixtures is could well stretch us. So that could be a really tough run, and that might decide how well we do in the remainder of the season, I think. But we'll see. As for Saturday, yeah, I mean, Burnley always kind of worries me a bit because they're Burnley. They are the founder members of the awkward squad. Although actually, I mean, in recent history, we've obviously had had the edge over you. But as I said, you never know. I mean, I think that a lot of us remember the 3-2 win from 2018, first game of the season, of course, which was, in a funny old sense, the beginning of the end for Conte, because that season ended up being pretty miserable, although he won the FA Cup. But Burnley were fantastic that day, and we weren't at the races, although, of course, Cahill got sent off when arguably he shouldn't. But since then, it's been all us, really. I mean, there was, as I said, last season, we won 2-0. The season before that, we won 3-0 at home. I was there for taking my nephew to his first game, which was brilliant. And I have to say, I mean, this season, we just don't ever seem like conceding a goal. I mean, that's the most amazing thing. Edouard Mendy has been absolutely brilliant, but our defence looks so solid. Silva's an absolute Rolls Royce of a player, really, really world class, and I think has really made a difference to our defence as well as Mendy. So we're so tough to score against, and if you do get through us, Silva's there to mop it up, but you've got to get the ball off us first, and we seem to be so good at keeping possession these days. So I think Burnley will find it hard to score, that's for sure. So I can see us keeping another clean sheet. And I think the way that we're playing at the moment with, last week against Newcastle was a massive win for us. I know that might sound daft because it was only Newcastle with all the problems they've got, but they're a real bogey side for us up at St James's Park. And, we did find it a little bit tough in the first half to break them down, but we still won 3-0. So, I think that stands us in good stead for some of these kind of tricky games where teams might be a bit more defensively minded. My suspicion is Burnley's best chance is to have a go at us. Actually, really pressure us, try and put us under a bit of pressure and not just sit back behind them, 10 men behind the ball, because you never know, we might creak if you do that. But that said, I still think we're probably good. I think 3-0 would be, what I would be looking for. But I mean, Burnley, they've got a little bit of a resurgence recently, haven't they? I mean, you had a bit of an iffy start to the season, but you seem to have picked up a little bit recently and beating Brentford 3-1. I mean, Burnley's a funny side, isn't it? I mean, you're 18th now, but I don't think you'll be relegated. I think Sean Dyche has got enough about him to get you out of the relegation places. And I think we often see this, don't we, that your season kind of gathers a bit of momentum. And, I wouldn't be surprised to see you finish, 13th, 14th, something like that. But definitely not to get relegated. And I hope not. I've got a bit of a soft spot for Sean Dyche. And I love the fact that you keep fighting and keep staying in the Premier League. I think it's brilliant. And they're a fine old club, great traditions. So I hope you do stay in the division. Obviously, I hope you lose on Saturday. I can't give you any luck for that. But for the rest of the season, I wish you all the best. Anyway, that's me done. Hopefully speak to you soon.
Interesting stuff. Thank you for that input. I do like listening to opposition fans. I find it hilarious to think about how they perceive games, opposite to how we perceive games. It's very amusing. Needless to say, Chelsea fans quite confident at the weekend. Of course they are. Who's the referee then? Dave, who's going to be managing the game at the weekend?
It's Birmingham-based official, 50-year-old Andre Mariner. He'll be in charge at Stamford Bridge on Saturday afternoon. Burnley don't have the best of records in the 12 previous Premier League games of ours, which is refereed. Although we recorded home wins over QPR and more memorably Manchester City in 2015, we've lost 8 of the last 9, with a 1-1 draw at home to Arsenal in March as the only time we managed any kind of positive result in those recent games. He has tended to keep his red cards in his pocket, although he did show one to Eric Peters in that match against Arsenal, as well as awarding a penalty before the video assistant referee, who was Kevin Friend that day, quite rightly ruled that the ball had hit the top of his shoulder and overturn the original decisions. Speaking of video assistant referees, Mike Dean will be in charge of the cameras at Stockley Park on Saturday afternoon.
Excellent.
Statman Dave's Stat of the Week.
Well, I know you don't want to leave it there, Dave, because you like to treat our listeners. You don't tweet our listeners. You sometimes tweet our listeners, but you treat our listeners. So why don't you delve deep into those pockets of yours and let our listeners have your miscellaneous Stat of the Week?
Yeah, well, since Burnley's 2009 promotion to the Premier League, we've played the so-called Big Six clubs. So that's Man City, Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal and Spurs in 44 away league games. In addition to our win at Stamford Bridge in 2017, which we've already mentioned, the only other Burnley victories to date in these away games were the 2-0 win at Old Trafford in January 2020, the 1-0 win at the Emirates in December 2020, and the 1-0 win at Anfield in January 2021. So Burnley's overall record in those 44 away games against the Big Six is played 44, won 4, drawn 10, and lost 30, which kind of puts the task we face this weekend into some perspective. I'm sure you'll agree.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. How are you feeling about the game then? I'm kind of frustrated that we've got to go to Stamford Bridge straight after our first win of the season, Dave, because the one thing we need more than anything is a little bit of a consistency and a bit of a run together, and it's going to be a bit fragmented if we work on the assumption that it's probably unlikely that we're going to get something with Chelsea just being as good as they are this season. Are you feeling any way confident at all?
I think all we can do is take the confidence we got from the win. We know we've been to places like Leicester this season, which wasn't an easy game, and we got a draw there. So I guess we've just got to go in with a positive attitude and hope we can get something out of the game. It's not going to be easy. We know that. Chelsea's always a difficult place to go to. We have had a win there before. We've had a couple of draws, so we have been able to get results at Stamford Bridge in the past. They do seem to be a very good side this season. They've had some very good results. They've had consistency for most of the season to date. You suspect they're going to be right up there at the end. You think it might well be a three-way battle at the top. It's looking more and more like it's going to be Man City, Liverpool and Chelsea who are vying for that title at the end of the season. So it's going to be a toughie, we know that. But if we can take our A game into it and they have a slight off day, then who knows?
Yeah, definitely. Give me a score prediction, please, and I guess a result prediction as well.
I'd like. Well, you always say I sit on the fence and go for a draw, but I think realistically, I don't think we're going to win. So I'm going to go for a Chelsea win by 2-1.
Oh, I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to go for a draw. I think we could do something this time. I'm going to try and see if we can get one.
You're going to sit on the fence for a change.
I'm going to sit on that fence because you vacated it, and I feel like it's going to be lonely without one of us sat on it. So I'm going to go with a draw. Listeners, let us know what you think about the game. Do you predict any points for the Clarets, and if so, how many? Do you think we're going to score? And if so, who's going to score? How are they going to score? And what's the final result going to be? You can tweet us at knownandnever, or you can email us at previewshow@knownandnever.net.
Fantasy Premier League update.
Okay, second half of the show, Dave. Fantasy Premier League. It is now the end of game week 10. It's time for our regular FPL section because we need you to give us the lowdown on exactly what's been going on after game week 10. Who are the movers and shakers? Please take it away, Davido.
Well, after a relatively static week at the top in our previous update, game week 10 did provide some movement in the upper echelons of the No Nay Never League table, and we can bring you news of our current top 5. In 5th place, down to 5th, is Jack Toner on 695 points. Luke Lambert is up to 4th on 702. We've then got Dec Clark, who was our previous leader, I think, is down in 3rd place on 709. And then we've got joint leaders. We've got 2 managers at the top with 716 points. They are Joe Elliott and Andrew Smith.
Excellent. And how about No Never? How are we doing? Oh, actually, have we not got a manager of the month?
October manager of the month. Yeah, that's
exciting.
We can reveal our 3rd manager of the month now we've completed October, and the winner of a No Nay Never sticker is, drum roll.
Oh, hang on! I think I might have a drum roll. Do I have a drum roll? No, I don't have a drum roll. I think we used to have sound effects. I was having a quick look then. Okay.
Paul Gibson.
Paul Gibson, congratulations!
He tallied an impressive 284 points last month, just beating George Berry into 2nd place with Liam Kellington in 3rd. So well done to Paul Gibson.
Well done, Paul. Paul, do you want to drop us an email at previousshow@knownandever.net and let us have your address, and we will send you our Known and Ever sticker, please. And the rest of the managers, you know what you need to be aiming for in November, because you need to get your hands on one of those. Right, going back before I jumped ahead and forgot about October's Manager of the Month, how's Team Known and Ever doing?
Well, there were no changes in position in our separate podcasters mini league, but Adam Dennett scored an impressive 65 points last week to extend his lead, and also moved up to 7th place in the main No Nay Never league table. Your Dingle Bells team slipped another 14 places in the main league, from 224th to 238th, with just 29 points against an overall average of 42 points. And you're still in 5th and last place in our separate mini league.
Oh, boo. How am I always last? What about Team of the Week? Let's move on about that. Nobody cares about that. Nobody cares how I'm doing. What about Team of the Week? Were there any Burnley players in the highest scoring 11?
Well, these 11 players would have earned you 139 points, excluding double captain points or bonuses, and they were in a 4-5-1 formation. We had Aaron Ramsdale in goal. Our back four was Reece James, who will be facing on Saturday, Gabriel of Arsenal, Matt Lowton was in there as well.
Ooh.
Matt Lowton scored 14 points. And then Omabadele of Norwich. Am I right in pronouncing that? I'm sure I've pronounced that wrong.
I don't know, and we apologise in advance to anybody who has been offended by our terrible pronunciation of your surname. But that is a good effort.
The others are easy to pronounce. We've got a midfield 5 of Declan Rice, Gallagher of Crystal Palace, Bowen of West Ham United, Jordan Henderson of Liverpool, and another Chelsea player, Jorginho. And up front on his own was Manchester United's Cristiano Ronaldo. Although the average point score, as we mentioned, was just 42, one manager out there who's a Brentford fan scored a very impressive 116 points. That was without using any of their bonus chips. The highest score in the No Nay Never League was 75 from Kwasi Appiah.
Wow, that is impressive. How did you get that many points? How many did I get?
29.
29. And you got 75. 116. I don't understand. Well, listeners, we're going to have another FPL update for you after the international break, because we're going to have to wait a couple of weeks now until we face Crystal Palace at Turf Moor. So in the meantime, pay attention. Take a time in that international week to use, refresh your team, use those magic beans that we're given, and let's see if we can have any new names hurtling up that table when we come to do another review at the end of game week 11.
Statman Dave's quiz question.
So let's finish there, Dave, because we need to finish with a quiz question. What have you decided to set our listeners this week?
Well, we didn't feature Burnley's only Premier League win at Stamford Bridge in our memory match, but it does feature in this week's quiz question. What we want to know from you is, which Burnley player made his debut for the club in the 3-2 away win at Stamford Bridge in August 2017?
Oh, that is a good question. How do our listeners submit their answers, please, Dave?
Well, you can get in touch with us, let us know the answer using any of these methods. You can tweet us or send us a direct message on Twitter. That's at NoNayNever. You can email us at previewshow@knownaynever.net, or you can reply to the post of this preview show on either the No Nay Never Facebook page or on YouTube.
Excellent. And do send your results in, please, your answers, because we do like to see them. And obviously, we're getting a bit fed up of all of these regular listeners just getting the question right every week. We want some new ones, please. And I'm going to submit my answer straight after the recording, which is how I do that. We're going to give you the correct answer after the international break when we're looking ahead at that Crystal Palace tie. So you've got plenty of time this time to mull that over and send us your answer. So let's wrap that up then, Dave. Let's let our listeners get on with their weeks. Any other business? Do we need to, any community news or anything else that we need to disclose?
Well, this is our last match before the third international break of the season. We have got coming up after that. Our next 5 fixtures are, as we mentioned, we've got Crystal Palace at home on Saturday the 20th of November. We're then at home again against Spurs on Sunday the 28th. That's been moved to the Sunday because of their involvement in Europe. It's not a televised game. And then we have a televised game. We've got a rare midweek game. We're away at Wolves on 1st of December. That's on Amazon Prime. We're then away again at Newcastle United on Saturday the 4th, another 3 o'clock kickoff, not televised. And then again, another Sunday match, but again, not televised. We're at home to West Ham United on the 12th of December. However, the No Nay Never team will not be slacking during that time. At least some of us won't be. We've got plans for a couple of specials during the international break. So once we've had the analysis show looking at Saturday's match at Chelsea, check your alerts for a couple of other recordings which will be coming your way over the next week or so.
Definitely, that would be awesome. I do like it when I actually get to. I don't need to get involved in these international specials anymore. I can take a bit of a holiday. It's really great. I'm not going to be around next week, listeners. So God knows what state I'm going to leave the team in. But do tune in because I'm sure it'll be our usual No Nay Never blend of chaos. That is all we have time for then this week. My thanks as ever go to everybody who has contributed to making this week's preview show, to Stamford Chidge of the Chelsea FanCast for his opposition view, to Turf Moor Stadium announcer Dominic Walker for his specially recorded preview show announcements, producer Matt always for editing this and getting it out there, and to Dave Roberts who just puts so much effort into getting these stats together, and it's a labour of love, and we are very, very, very lucky to have him. Last but no means least, you, the listener, for downloading and listening to this episode. Your support is very much appreciated and we would not be here without you. The analysis show will be back on Tuesday, analysing what happened away at Stamford Bridge at the weekend. I don't know who's going to be leading that, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I think the lads will probably just get together with a cup of tea or a beer and chat it through. We might even have a bit of a ranty Rich going on because that's we've not had him for a week. That would be quite nice. But then Dave and I will be back a week on 2 weeks today. Yeah, 2 weeks today, where we look ahead for the previous show for Crystal Palace away. Take care of yourselves in the meantime. Godspeed to anybody travelling down to Stamford Bridge. Cheer the boys on and bring those 3 points back. I've been Natalie Bromley. This has been the preview show brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. Until next time.